How much protein do weightlifters actually need to build strength? Does protein source really matter? And what are some easy ways to increase your protein intake without meal prepping everything? In episode 43 of the Last Set Best Set podcast, Coach Calvin and I dive deep answering these questions and more. And if you love learning about Olympic weightlifting, getting strong, and building muscle, then make sure to subscribe. Welcome back to the Last Set Best Set podcast. I'm Coach Brian. I'm the owner of Big Ben Strength. I've been teaching Olympic lifting for 11 years now.
And I'm Coach Calvin. I am 2025 National University Champion, current captain of Lindenwood University's Olympic weightlifting team, as well as a coach through Big Ben Strength.
And today we're going to be answering some questions that you guys submitted to us, starting with question number 1. Calvin, how much protein do I actually need to get better at weightlifting?
Oh boy, good question, right? This is a pretty loaded one. So there's kind of a lot that can go into how much protein you need. And to be honest, I think most of you guys listening, you probably have a number in your head that you know you should hit. So I just kind of want to preface this episode by saying, we're going to give you all the info why you need to hit that number, not just spit that number at you. So be sure to listen all the way to the end so you guys are hearing, kind of everything that goes into why that number is important, and kind of the nuance to it, because it's easy to put a Instagram reel up, oh, you need this much protein, but this podcast format is super great because we can actually go in and explain why, the reasons behind that kind of stuff. So we put a good bit of research into this episode too. Basically, there's a super minimum number. So you have a recommended daily allowance. This is like the amount of protein like your grandma needs to just be healthy, or somebody who doesn't lift at all, to perform regular body functions that involve protein. That's going to be 0.8 grams of protein per kg of body weight. So it's very low, not the kind of number that you're used to hearing when you hear people throw around, oh, you need this much protein, you need this much protein. So what's that number that maybe some of you guys have in your head? Let's think about it. There's a review article here. It's a systematic review done by Morton and colleagues, and this puts together 49 individual protein studies into one paper, and they kind of analyze all the results. And their results specifically are looking at strength and building muscle, and where's the level. They want to find out what that number is. And kind of what they saw is a really clear linear relationship up until 1.6 grams of protein per kg of body weight. After that, it seemed to kind of plateau off. There wasn't as clear of a relationship. So what this tells us is that we pretty much know if you're going below 1.6 grams of protein per kg of body weight, that you're not covering your bases. It's very likely that you're not having the gains you could have below that number. So we kind of want to consider that our minimum for how much protein you're getting in if you want to build muscle, if you want to get stronger. So 1.6 grams per kg. If you weigh 200 pounds, this is about 150 grams of protein. So maybe not a ton, maybe not that huge number you're kind of used to hearing. Most people are pretty familiar with 1 gram per pound of body weight. This is kind of like the highest end that I would say going into is reasonable. So anything more than that, and it might be beneficial, maybe, but it's definitely not going to be harmful unless it's really, kind of it's like decreasing the amount of carbs that you can eat, or some other, nutrient. Maybe you're having a lot of stomach discomfort because you're cramming down 300 something grams of protein, right?
It's also just super filling food too, so if you're getting 300 grams, you're going to have such a hard time eating enough food.
Yeah, and the main point is that it's research-wise not clearly necessary, so kind of why would you put yourself in that discomfort, yeah?
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so then when it comes to all this protein intake, how important really is quality of protein then for people?
Yeah, so here's where some of that nuance comes in. And protein quality, there's a few scales out there that measure this. So PDCAAS scale, the PDCAAS scale, is one that attempts to measure how digestible a protein is. And so they're actually going to examine your poop, yes, your poop, to see how much of the protein was digested through different protein sources. So what we're looking at here when we're thinking about really high quality protein sources, and now this is on a scale of 0 to 1. So 1 being this is all of it's getting digested, and 0 being like almost none of it's getting digested. So our best quality protein sources, whey or milk protein, is going to be number 1. So that's 1.0. Casein, also coming from milk protein, is 1.0. Eggs, also 1.0. And soy, actually, is 1.0 as well. And then it starts to slightly fall off. Beef, 0.92. Soybeans, 0.91. Vegetable protein, 0.7. Cereal grains, 0.59. And then like gelatin, which has protein, I suppose, in it, your Jello, is going to be 0.08. So it's almost 0. You're almost getting no protein from that.
So no protein from Jello shots. Got it.
Yes. No protein shots.
Got it. Okay. Where do you know? I mean, it's not on here, but do you know where chicken falls in with this?
Oh yeah, chicken's a very high quality source of protein as well. That's funny that that wasn't included on this specific graphic here. But yeah, chicken breast is one of the highest quality. I mean, it's a lean source as well, so you're not getting the saturated fat that you might get from beef as well, which is kind of associated with, cholesterol and things like that. So for general health, you don't want to just be eating all 80/20 ground beef for every meal. That's probably not the best thing you can be doing for yourself. But
Got
yeah,
it.
good
Okay.
question.
So with the protein quality, what makes them digestible? I know we kind of talked a little bit before about something called leucine, and that it might be a little bit more important than people think.
Yeah, so protein, there's different types of proteins. You might have heard of essential amino acids or non-essential amino acids. Many people are familiar with BCAAs as a popular supplement. That's called branch chain amino acids. Basically, what kind of makes a good protein? We think about like, okay, so we have this scale that rates how digestible things are. But we also want to think about kind of like, does this have all the blocks we need to build muscle? So animal sources are going to be complete sources of protein. They're going to have all 9 essential amino acids. So essential amino acids are essential. You can only get them from your diet. Whereas the non-essential ones can be formed in the body naturally. There's some nuance there, but for simplicity's terms, let's think about it that way. And so basically, this is saying you have to get these essential amino acids. And I think a good way to think about it is like if you were trying to build a house.
One thing I realized a few years ago as a burnt out weightlifter is that there's no rules for how a weightlifting program is supposed to look. You don't have to push through heavy snatches and clean and jerks on a daily basis, especially if this is a hobby for you. That's when I made the switch to OlyBuilding, a style of training with a true 50-50 balance between Olympic lifting and bodybuilding. Not just a few sets of some accessory work that is, let's be honest, lazily picked at the end of the workout. So if you want to focus more on building muscle without losing your Olympic lifts, then check out the 8-week OlyBuilding program linked in the description below. And you can save 20% at checkout when you use the discount code LASTSETPOD. All right, back to the show.
And maybe you have all the copper wiring you need for a house, but you don't have the wood you need. So, and there's a million other parts that go into building a house. Do you have the floorboards? Do you have the concrete? Do you have all these different parts? Let's say we got basically all but one, and we try and build this house. It's not a complete house. It's not done. And this is the same for building muscle. You need all 9 of these to build that muscle. And one of them specifically is very important, and has been very highly correlated with muscle protein synthesis, and that is one of the branch chain amino acids, which is called leucine. There's something called the leucine threshold. You have to get about, let's say, 3 grams of leucine to really maximally stimulate this muscle protein synthesis. So, which just means building muscle. And kind of in your body at all times, there's a constant breakdown of muscle and building of muscle happening. So we need to do things to stimulate this building of muscle working out, of course, and consuming protein are those things we need to do to keep building that muscle, to keep that rate higher than the breakdown. So, your body needs proteins to perform various, kind of cellular processes, to keep you alive. So it's going to break down your muscle and use the protein in your muscle, to do that if you don't eat protein in your diet. So it's kind of a constant fight. Both of these are always happening, but we want to keep the synthesis higher than the breakdown if we want to build muscle in the long term. And as far as it comes to recovery for strength athletes, maybe you're not gaining or losing weight or gaining or losing muscle, but you want to at least match that breakdown, right? Because we don't want our muscles to be breaking down. That would be awful for getting strength gains, yeah?
Right, that makes sense. So then I think that especially seems to be like a pretty important topic in this whole protein discussion. What are some of the things that cause that gap to spread between protein synthesis and breakdown?
Yeah, so going a long time without protein is probably the main example that comes to mind. So that's going to look like, if you wake up in the morning, you already, you already slept for 8 hours, hopefully, right? Let's hope you're sleeping 8 hours. And you don't eat until lunchtime at 1 p.m. So you woke up at 8 a.m. and there's another 5 hours. That's 13 hours since you went to bed. And maybe you didn't have protein for the couple hours before, but 15 hours. 15-hour window, you had no protein. That's a lot of time for breakdown to happen, and not a lot of time. There's no synthesis happening, right? Like for simplicity terms, again, effectively no synthesis happening in this time. We're all breakdown, and that's going to be really hard to come back from if you're going to try and come into training that day. If you're going to try and if you are actually have a goal of building muscle, to be in that depleted state, that catabolic state. Maybe you've heard that anabolic versus catabolic state. Is It's just going to be like the worst thing you can do for your muscle building or strength building goals, is to take this really long extended period of time, where you're having no protein.
So that, when I was like getting started in lifting, it was really common to hear people talk about like the window of gains, which was like you have to have protein in an hour after you work out. Uh,
Yeah, the anabolic window.
yeah, the anabolic window of gains, which we maybe now know that that's probably not quite as important, but there seems to be at very least a window of loss here, which is that time between going to bed, or I guess your last meal from the night before, into your first meal in the morning, where if you're not really consuming any protein in that time, that's a big window of time that you could be, that you're missing out on for sure.
Honestly, yeah, and I think a lot of people miss out on this.
Mm-hmm.
Having protein before bed and as soon as you wake up, this is like the number one thing you can do to really recover better,
Mm-hmm.
other than sleeping really hard and really well. But that's like the best thing you can do to recover better. Or if you want to build muscle, like you have to, like, that's already 8 hours, right? That you're having nothing, no
Right.
protein. So you want to immediately disrupt that. Like right as soon as you wake up, have a source of protein, have a protein shake, have a protein bar, have, even, a source of meat or dairy, right in the morning.
So maybe instead of like immediately waking up and slamming espresso into my face, I should probably have like some protein before that.
I would say that Monster Energy does not replace protein. That would
Yeah.
be my recommendation there. If your breakfast is a Monster Energy and a Twinkie or something, I mean, you're probably
Breakfast of
not listening to this
champions.
podcast. We know our listeners would never do that,
We
but
know our listeners would never do that for sure. Okay, so then we kind of have touched on this topic already a little bit. But how important is timing in this? We know that it's important to make sure not to have big long windows of time, after you eat dinner and when you wake up the next day. But does that also matter on kind of a smaller scale?
so as far as what I've seen, when it comes to like your workout and kind of that actual like anabolic window, some people think you need that shake like right after your workout, or you're definitely missing out on gains. It seems like there's not really a difference between having shake before your workout versus after versus even during. Um, so as long as you're kind of having adequate protein coming into your system when you're working out, you're stimulating that muscle protein synthesis, right? So you're stimulating that building part, and that needs to be a lot higher than the breakdown part. As long as you have protein in your system, probably every 3 to 4 hours throughout the day, throughout your waking day, you're probably covering your bases. But honestly, like I kind of like because the workout is part of my routine. And
Hmm.
when it comes to hitting your protein, having a routine where you're hitting your protein is really important. So I like to bring a shake after I work out. I'm hungry after. A lot of times, if you're not hungry, stomaching down a protein shake is not the most appetizing thing. So you're hungry after that workout, you want to get that in. So slamming that shake, whether it's immediately after you get done working out or 30 minutes after, is probably a really good idea. As well as just having a well-rounded meal within an hour or two after you're done working out. Like, you're using all of this energy, from those carbs, and you need to repair your muscle and build it back up. You stimulated that muscle protein synthesis during your workout. Um, so we want to build all that back up. It's just very important to have consistent meals and not have these long break times. But as far as like the supplementation and the timing of it, as long as you're hitting that like every 3 or 4 hours, like you're probably covering all your bases. 3 or 4 hours and the total amount of protein, and most of it's coming from those high quality sources. Kind of getting that leucine in, like we talked about. And so I kind of mentioned that number, like 3 grams of leucine, but I didn't really clarify, I don't think, like how you get that 3 grams.
Yeah, let's
So
dive into that.
so that leucine, it's very well seen in a lot of like high quality foods that we've talked about. That chicken breast, that beef, different fish, tuna, salmon, steak. You got eggs as well. So you're going to see a lot of leucine in these. From just 6 ounces of chicken breast, you're going to have about 36 grams of protein total, and about 3 grams of that protein are leucine. So that's exactly the number we want to get to, is that 3 grams. So anywhere between like 25 grams of protein to 40 grams of protein, you're going to be covering your bases, getting enough leucine that's going to stimulate that muscle protein synthesis process to the highest nth degree, right? Because it's not like just eating one little bit of protein stimulates the same amount as eating a full serving of protein. And it's not linear, right? So each protein increment between that's equal doesn't lead to the same amount of gains. You kind of have to hit a certain threshold, right? That leucine threshold to really maximally lead to the most gains, the most recovery when it comes to that protein stuff. Do you think that covers that?
Yeah, that makes sense. So I just want to clarify that real quick. So what you're saying there is like you almost have to have a minimum intake of protein in a serving for the amount of leucine to kick in to get all of the synthesis out of the protein you're consuming.
Yeah, and there's a very high amount of individual variation when it comes to that.
Sure.
So 3 grams is the high end of that range. Um, which if you're a very large person might just be like the number you need. Maybe you're very small, you don't need that 3 grams per se.
Mm.
um, and it's actually like 700 milligrams to 3000 milligrams. That's the ideal ratio, is somewhere in there.
Hmm.
But that's covered by the 25 to 40 complete grams of protein that I just threw out. That number that'll cover your bases as far as if you're hitting that maximal protein synthesis stimulating number. That's kind of where you want to be, that 25 to 40 grams of protein.
So then would it be helpful to like supplement with BCAAs or ECAAs, if just to get your leucine in and other important things? Like where does that kind of fall in?
So first of all, you got to consider, how much is money worth to me, um, and how many little percentage points would I even be gaining by buying this BCAA supplement compared to maybe just buying an actual protein supplement. Now,
Mm.
of course, the difference kind of being BCAAs are usually flavored and taste good, and it's like a juice mixture kind of thing, whereas a protein shake typically doesn't necessarily taste the best. It's kind of tough to get down, like we talked about a little bit.
You sound like somebody
But
who's been gaining weight for a while.
I'm not going to tell you, I got sick of protein powder. I got super sick of protein powder at one point. I was getting pretty nauseous because I just had so much of it over a long period of time. I'm kind of a, I don't know, is squeamish the right word? Like a squeamish eater. Like I just have to, especially in the mornings, I have to get in kind of very palatable foods. I'm not very hungry.
Yeah.
Um, but I
Yeah.
have structured, my day around getting that protein in. So, sometimes you got to tough it out and drink the shake you don't want to drink. But it was really catching up to me at one point.
Yeah.
Um, but what was I saying about what did
How
you ask?
important is money to you with these BCAAs?
Yeah, like in my opinion, right? Unless you have a ton of money and just want to throw it at supplements, BCAAs probably aren't worth it. So branched chain amino acids, leucine is one of those. So if you're eating a meal with protein, and remember, we need all 9 essential amino acids if we want to build muscle. If you're eating a meal with a complete source of protein, you're covering your bases and it has 25 to 40 grams. You're covering your bases there. So maybe if you're doing some kind of like ultra endurance event, you're running for 4 hours straight, maybe then, it's going to help with some of the breakdown during that race or something like that. But in general, we're talking to weightlifters on this podcast here. There's no reason you shouldn't be having normal meals throughout your day surrounding your weightlifting training,
Mm.
and having a few protein supplements likely in there
Yeah.
that they are a complete source of protein. They're very digestible because the BCAAs are there to just kind of like fill in a gap. It has potential to help if maybe you're a vegetarian and you're having plant sources of protein that aren't complete sources, that aren't highly digestible and usable.
Mm.
Uh, and there's kind of a thing there too. Different combos of plant sources will lead to being a complete source. So
Like, what's an example of that?
you might combine grains with legumes or like beans, right? And so if you combine those two together, we know that the gaps essentially in those two, protein or those two food groups are complementary of each other. So they kind of come together to be a complete source of protein. However, as far as I'm aware, it's not that simple per se. It's not like guaranteed the way they combine. Um, it's kind of like back to our house analogy where we need every component of the house, all 9, things we need to build this house. Uh, it's like if you took half the stuff from one house and half the stuff from the other house. It might not make the perfect looking house. It might still be a house technically, but this might not. Maybe that doorway is too big or something like that, right? Oh, this is a 3-car garage door, but we have a 2-car garage. So, something like that. Um,
Good
in my
analogy.
opinion, is it?
It's close. It's close
Um,
enough. It doesn't quite work.
not really. Uh, but yeah, you probably don't need to consciously combine that unless you're totally vegan. Like then
Mm.
it's definitely something to consider.
Yeah.
Because
And
if you're
even
vegetarian, yeah,
then, a lot of people who are vegan, where they're getting their meals, a lot of the time the substitutions that they're using are taking a lot of this stuff into account and adding that
yeah,
in different ways. So just because you're vegan doesn't necessarily mean that you're not getting in those nutrients. You might actually be getting them in with the processed versions of whatever that you're consuming.
yeah, and that's a tricky one. Definitely, if you're vegetarian and you still consume milk, if you're
Mm.
not lactose intolerant, uh, lean on that. Lean
Yeah.
heavy on that. If you eat eggs, then yes. Question though, does eating eggs make you a vegetarian? Are you allowed to eat eggs?
I think that's like a borderline thing, but that's one that
Yeah.
starts to get a little closer to vegan.
Yeah, if you cut out all eggs and dairy as well,
Yeah.
yeah. I wasn't really sure what the vegetarian law was on eggs right there. Um, but definitely lean into those options if you don't eat a lot of meat in your diet. Some people just don't like meat. Some people
Yeah.
just don't like meat. I don't know if those are our weightlifters listening, but it might be a few of you
There's got
guys.
to be a few. Yeah. Do you see those you see those TikToks every now and then where it's like a my boyfriend's out of town, you know what that means? And it's just a carbs only meal. Just like no protein whatsoever.
And then you got to do the flip side where it's like, oh, girlfriend's out of town and it's just like a freaking ribeye or something like on the plate.
That's pretty spot on. Taking a quick break from the episode to let you know about the OlyStrong team. The OlyStrong team is my online group coaching option for lifters who are looking to improve their technique, get strong, and set PRs. It includes your choice of 3 or 5 days a week of workouts, daily video feedback, and unlimited coach messaging to ask as many questions as you'd like for less than $1 a day. If you're ready to get started, then click the link in the description below for a free week trial today. All right, back to the show. All right, let's go ahead and get into probably the most important aspect now. Now that we kind of understand why hitting that protein goal is so important, let's cover how to actually increase your protein intake. Like, what are you actually going to do? So you made a good point already, which is that if you want to increase your protein intake, it has to be a priority and a routine in your life. You kind of have to build your life a little bit around that. So what are some things that people can do to immediately help increase their protein intake? And what are some other things that we can do that maybe will help sneak some protein in for those people that have a harder time with that?
Yeah, so where to start there? Let's probably cover, you know, again, this needs to be a priority. You're not going to do it by accident. You need to kind of assess your life, assess where you're currently at with your protein, because otherwise we're just shooting in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think doing like a 2 or 3 day audit on your diet. Don't change anything. Just track what you eat to try and see how many grams of protein you're actually getting in. Is pretty important, especially if you've never tracked before. Committing to that for 2 or 3 days, just to be like, okay, where am I realistically at?
Yeah.
Like, and if that spits out 100 grams of protein, and that gram per pound is actually 200, you got a lot of work to do. Because we might be looking at it. Maybe you already hit the 2.2 and you don't even think about it already. Well, you probably don't need to make any changes to your life then. You
Mm.
already hit the gram per pound of body weight. But if we're under there, if we're more near the minimum at that 1.6 grams per kg, if you're around that 0.75 grams per pound of body weight is around where it would be, then you're going to want to probably make some changes if you're really interested in maximizing performance, maximizing muscle growth, and like take a look at your kind of schedule of protein eating. It's like, oh, I have 4 grams of protein for breakfast, and then none until lunchtime. Kind of what we talked about already. We really want to prioritize that breakfast and that before bed meal with protein already, with the big gap of sleep happening. And so, and like, really look at this stuff like, oh, I get like all my protein in through dinner. Yeah, I need to add a protein source to my lunch that I have. Um, you know, Having a consistent routine of meals can be really important too. So if you're just going out to eat for lunch every day and you go to a random spot wherever you feel like, and the protein stuff differs there heavily, um, it might be as simple as choosing protein options where you go to different places. But I do recommend kind of being in a routine of eating, kind of having the same, maybe it's lunch and breakfast and before bed meal every day. That makes it super easy to hit your protein if
It really
you set
does.
up those meals. Yeah, and like because a lot of people, they just, kind of random, oh, I grabbed a bar because I was hungry in the morning, and then I decided to go to Chick-fil-A for lunch because I was still hungry, and then, you know, oh, but I didn't get the same thing I usually get. We kind of want to standardize your life, and living like a robot, it doesn't have to be very robotic. What I like to do, dinner's pretty much different every day for me, but I know that if I hit my breakfast meal, if I hit my lunch meal, if I do my before bed meal, that as long as I'm getting that around 25 to 40 like regular serving of protein at dinner, I know that I'm good. I know that I'm covering my bases as far as protein. And I don't even have to track anymore, right? So tracking a couple days to do the audit, kind of making some changes, tracking again, being like, okay, I'm hitting it now. As long as I have a protein shake before bed, I know I'm going to hit that gram per pound of body weight. If I eat the same stuff, relatively throughout the rest of the day, well, now I don't have to think about it. Now I don't have to
Hmm.
track. Now it's just part of my routine. It's like brushing my teeth before I go to bed. Oh, I got to get my protein shake in. Um, so you really got to set your life up kind of around it. And I'll tell you this, I don't think it's that hard for most people to, take an audit midday. Oh, am I eating enough protein? Did I have it for breakfast? Did I have it for lunch? Did I have it at every meal? Like, that's important. Get it in at every meal. Uh, and there's a lot of different options uh, for protein kind of on the go, or with very low preparation. You don't always have to like get out the skillet and like cook up some chicken in the skillet, right? So I know, Brian, you had a few that you've utilized. Do you want to say those real quick?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I just realized that I tend to forget a lot, and so I'll end up being on the way to the gym or on the way somewhere. So for me, I think it's good to have some car protein essentially. What's something that you can keep in your car, keep in your gym bag that can kind of save you in emergencies. So jerky is honestly the easiest one. I think turkey jerky or beef jerky, pretty great stuff. And you could just buy in bulk and then keep a big old serving of it in the car if you need it for emergencies. And then different protein bars. Shop around, find the one that's best for you. That you like the taste of, or you can at least tolerate the taste of, that still has like a pretty high quality protein and isn't actually just like a junk bar. So those are some of the big ones. I also think that it's helpful to also plan a couple emergency, like if you have to go out to eat, where can you go that you can get a couple, like a great meal. Like if you're traveling, that you can stop at, I don't know, Chick-fil-A or something like that and get grilled nugs, and that's the way to go. Because you can get a ton of high quality, like a ton of protein in, and that's it, right? So I think having ways that make it easier for you to eat enough protein in while you're on the go is really helpful to save yourself a little bit when you are in those situations where you're running around a little bit. So those are
Yeah,
some important ones.
for sure.
Yeah. What are some other ones that you do? I know we talked about like trying to get a shake in before, like right when you wake up and right before you go to bed. That way you're kind of covering your 8 hour window there, and covering that end as well. What else you got?
Yeah, and kind of like, I've been so good at hitting my protein in the past that, I've been like, oh, well, how can I, replace that nighttime shake with something that's a little less processed, a little more whole foods? Maybe I can do Greek yogurt at night. That's a good option, or cottage cheese before I go to bed. And I can kind of pack a lot more nutrient containing things into that. So like I'd put some walnuts in that Greek yogurt, put some berries, some blueberries, some strawberries, some honey in there. And then I'm sort of kind of hitting a lot of other nutrient bases, as opposed to just the protein shake
Right.
every night. So there's kind of like a second level to that. Um, but yeah, definitely once you can hit your protein consistently, you can kind of start mixing it up. Some easy ways if you're not already hitting it. Milk is a huge one for me. I'm not lactose intolerant. I don't really have any problems with it. So I'm drinking a lot of milk, especially when living on campus at Lindenwood. We have unlimited milk and chocolate milk in the dining hall. That's huge. If they don't have a protein option I like at the dining hall, okay, have like 20 ounces of milk, and then I know I'm hitting my leucine threshold, right? Still, I'm
Hmm.
getting in that whey protein from the milk, to kind of hit that level. And yeah, definitely just having like little things ready in the fridge that you can do like that is important, as well as those bars or jerky. Especially like yeah, having a good protein bar on hand can be really helpful if you like the kind of protein stuff. Now,
Yeah,
Brian,
I want to I want to know what are your thoughts on some of these, like some of these protein snacks, protein pancakes, protein cookies.
Dude. Yeah, so I'm pretty strongly opinionated about these. I'm not gonna lie, because I think they're stupid. Like, I like the idea. Getting in protein is good, right? That's a great idea. But I'd rather, let's say we have protein cookie. I'd rather just eat a cookie and then also have a protein bar, or eat a cookie and also have a protein shake, instead of just having a really shitty cookie. Like this is like this foam. It tastes like cardboard kind of cookie. I'm like, "Ah, this is not like." People are like, it's so good. It has 20 gram. It's not
No,
good. Stop lying to
they're
yourself.
fooling
Like,
themselves. They are straight up. They're lying to convince
yeah.
themselves. They're not selling anybody.
Yeah, I saw Zach Tellender, shout out to him. He posted something talking about protein pancakes. And he said, this protein pancake, you're literally taking the ingredients of a pancake and the ingredients of a protein shake, and you're just combining it into one. And it's kind of just making this pancake that tastes not as good as a regular pancake. Where you could just drink the protein shake and eat a normal pancake, and that's like a perfectly acceptable alternative to that. Like it's
And
like
tastes better too.
Hey guys, quick interruption to the video to tell you about my 12-week weightlifting program. This program is something I put a lot of time and effort into, so be sure to go check it out. The program takes you through a few weeks of volume, strength phase, and then finally ends off with a peaking phase, ending out the program. It comes with a demo video showing you how the program works, how to use it, as well as exercise videos for all the complexes that are used throughout the program. Be sure to go check it out down below, and let's get back into the video.
At the end of the day, like if you're getting a little bit more protein in, that's not a bad thing. So use those as a tool if you have to, but also
yeah,
understand that you don't have to lie to yourself that they're also tasty. Which and
yeah.
I'm sure that we also just ruined our chances of getting any sort of sponsorship when it comes to, what are those cookies, the protein cookies.
I have no clue.
We're not going to name them because they don't sponsor us. So there we go.
No shout outs.
No shout outs over here. Okay, and then let's go over some just like, I don't know, what do you do for dinner or for lunch that is pretty regular? Because I'm of the opinion I kind of eat like a dog almost, where I'm just like, I'm going to eat
Yeah.
the same stuff over and over and over again, and maybe I'll swap the sauce or something like that. But I know other people don't necessarily like to live like that. I'm straight up just somebody who will buy like 6 pounds of ground beef and 6 chicken breasts and then just eat that throughout the week in different ways.
Yeah, I kind of, especially, I like the routine of school when I'm in
Yeah.
school, when I have the dining hall available. And now that our dining hall mixes up every single day, basically. There's some staple options that kind of stay.
Mhm.
But that's kind of nice that, I kind of like think about trying to create the same sort of plate every day. I want, especially, it'll kind of look different based on whether you're weight gain, weight loss, weight maintain, whether you're a strength athlete, an endurance athlete, how many calories you are burning during training. There's so many considerations. For me personally, I'm going to say this is not a recommendation for other people to do. But yeah, I'll have like about half the plate is like a good carb source, whether it's pasta or a grain or rice, right? About a quarter of the plate is protein, and then the other quarter is vegetables. That's pretty much what I do every day for lunch. My breakfast, I probably should have started with breakfast, don't you think? But my breakfast has pretty much been the same for the last year or so. Protein shake, banana, either a Cliff Bar or like a Nutri-Grain breakfast bar, uh, and orange juice, a glass of orange juice, like 12 ounces maybe. And that's pretty much my breakfast all the time. At nighttime, before I go to bed, a lot of times I'll have that Greek yogurt that I mentioned earlier with the walnuts, with the honey, with the berries maybe. But when I'm feeling a little more lazy, I'll just have a protein shake and maybe a handful of walnuts for that kind of brain health from the omega-3 fatty acids. And yeah, dinner's kind of going to look the same. It'll depend a little bit, like I said, on hunger levels, on weight gain or weight loss goals. So like if I'm trying to gain weight, I might throw a couple things of chocolate milk in there and a dessert. But generally I'm having that same kind of plate again that I described for lunch, like half carbs, quarter protein, quarter vegetables. And then as I'm hungry, adding on to that in maybe some different ways. But that's a pretty good guideline for how I approach my meals. You want to stay really balanced and whole food focused if possible. Yeah, I'd say that's just a pretty good recommendation. Kind of hit all parts, and if it's coming from whole food sources, you're probably in a pretty good spot.
Dude, awesome. I think we kind of fully covered that. Anything else that you want to go over as far as protein?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably so much more that could be talked about with like little nitty-gritty topics. But to kind of recap, we want minimum 1.6 grams per kilo, which is 0.75 grams per pound. And then on the high end, kind of what we want to aim for is that 2.2 grams per kilo or 1 gram per pound of body weight. There is kind of like, there was a study that I saw. So it's from Ben Dagan and a few colleagues of his. And this study found that 1.7 grams per kilo, so kind of that low end number that we talked about, that was enough to maintain that breakdown and synthesis balance that we talked about. It was enough to maintain that for half of people. So this isn't a one size fits all kind of thing, right? But that 2.2 grams per kilo, that was enough for 95% of people.
Dang.
So there's not really a good way of knowing what person you are, though, other than if you're really attentive to like getting body scans and measuring how much muscle you're actually gaining, doing each thing. We're not scientists here. So instead of just guessing and saying, oh, I hope I'm on the low end, 1.6, 1.7 grams per kilo, probably a good idea to just hit that 2.2 grams per kilo. So there's definitely room for individual variation here. So even, among a body weight ratio of protein, there's a lot that kind of go into there. Maybe if you're 45% body fat, you might not need as much protein as somebody who is very lean per, kg of body weight, right? There's considerations there. There's so much individual variation that goes into your diet and just kind of what you like, what you enjoy eating. Don't try and cram yourself into, some arbitrary number or arbitrary thing just because two guys online on a podcast perhaps told you to do that. These are kind of recommendations, right? These are best recommendations as far as literature, as far as what we know, what we feel comfortable recommending. But understand that this isn't the end all be all, and you don't need to do this for success. But it probably could help you quite a bit if you hit that gram per pound. That's kind of the big takeaway, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. Calvin, where can people find you?
At Calvin Lackey, 81 kg.
And you guys can find me at Big Ben Strength. Make sure to check out our programs and coaching link down in the description below. We'll catch you guys next week. Bye.